With Season 11 being right around the corner, and squads being the next competitive mode, I thought it would be fun to talk about what roles there are in a team. The current meta that allows teams to place consistently is to play for endgame, and pick up placement points by using mats to help rotate, also known as tunneling, all the while having to fight enemies and rotate into the next zone. I don't want to go too much into how to play customs, because that is an entirely different topic on its own. For starters, there are 3 main roles, and they consist of fragger, support, and tunneler. Most of these pertain to endgame situations, but support can have a bigger role early. Fragger is the most basic role on the 3 because you only focus on looking for kills, and that's about it. But game sense plays a big part in getting these kills. Knowing where to look helps a lot. For example, looking for players rotating from the old zone into the new one gets you a lot of free kills. Fraggers should also be aware of when to drop mats for their team, because tunneler has an important role in keeping the team from any harm, and in most cases, tunnelers have a lot more to worry about than a fragger. Fragger players should have good aim and be consistent with being aware of where enemies are and which teams to focus. Utilizing RPGs, miniguns, and other utilities is essential to being a good fragger. Next up is tunneler. A less active role, but a good tunneler knows the basic tunnels, including straight, bizzle, and even leaving one side open. In most cases, straight tunneling is the most used, and that's something all tunnelers should practice. Knowing how to use mats effectively and knowing when to switch layers and when to switch mats is something you learn over time. Some strategies include building out of wood early to have hard mats for endgame, but in most cases that's risky. When getting focused, stone and metal is the go-to choice and you have to swap to them early, otherwise use a lot of mats. Also, tunnelers have responsibilities on staying ahead of zone and being on top of the upcoming new zones, and making sure that your team has a place to rotate through once zone starts. Being vocal to your team about which walls they need to be careful for and which areas may have players, whether it's above or to the side, is something that a good tunneler needs to be vocal about. Being vocal to your team about which walls they need to be careful for and which areas may have players, whether it's above or to the side. When you watch this clip, you see Booga replace the wall and let his team know that the floor isn't theirs, and he proceeds to replace it and then continue to move on. This allows his team to continue and not have to worry about any of the walls not being theirs.
Guys, not my roof, not my roof. Guys, come up. I'm 200 wood, 200 wood.
I got mats.
Okay, can someone else build? I'm 80.
Okay, here, take all this.
Okay.
You can also see that Booga lets his team know that he doesn't have mats anymore, that someone needs to take over. The fragger players here, being Clarity and Fetch, they decide they just drop their mats and then Booga continues. Also, being vocal when they need mats is important. Being a good builder is helpful when changing layers, but in most cases, if a tunneler stays ahead of zone, they have an easy time. The next big role is support, the one that glues the team together. A good support knows when to help and when to look for opportunities. Being able to tunnel is a big plus because when the main tunneler needs to heal, someone should take over, and in reality, anyone can do this job. Someone just has to do it.
Yeah, take mini.
Also have heavy snipe. RPG, they might get shot onto our layer. On your wall?
Yeah, above.
We might be second eye, not sure. In here, right here. Dead, get that.
Yeah, got it.
Nothing, I have nothing. You wanna drop?
Yeah, drop. We have to drop.
Okay.
Dropping now.
I have a heavy snipe. Look at me.
As you watch this clip here, you see
Hey,
Booga
get in.
2v1 a player at the
Nice.
low ground, and they immediately focus on him from
I have
above.
impulses. We can do this.
They notice they both have impulses, and they decide that they can both impulse
RPG,
up.
I'm 70 mats.
Yeah, I know.
They basically
Okay,
commit to
I'm
the
gonna-
idea,
I
but
think
they
we
both
just
get
have to.
RPG'd here, and then Stretch instantly gets down. But Booga quickly impulses all 3 players off the side, and he has a chance to win this, but he runs out of mats and he can't block the last few shots. The last role to any good team is the IGL, also known as the in-game leader. The IGL needs to be able to assess how their team is doing. Does everyone have shotguns, or does their team need to keep looting? Being aware when to rotate and how to rotate is another aspect they need to learn. Choosing where to set up comes with game sense and experience. Playing around with the loot your team has is one of the biggest things in IGL you can learn. If your entire team has AR, shotguns, shields, and a lot of mobility, it might not be worth to take a mid-game fight, because you risk way too much. Getting an idea of the entire team's total mat count helps decide whether they are set up for endgame or do they need to keep farming or fight a team. IGL needs to have a team that's willing to listen to them and live with the calls. If a mistake is made, everyone in that team has to live with it and grow from it. Only then will the team improve. IGL isn't necessarily a role on its own because it's mostly placed to the idea of making plays, calling the shots, and calling what your team needs to do. With this in mind, IGL needs to be always aware and make life or death calls. IGL's players can be support players or fraggers because in most cases they don't have much to worry about. Link, play Tunneler, and then play. After watching this video, I hope you have a better understanding of how to play competitive and what roles need to be filled. IGL is one of the most important roles because they decide whether your team fights or runs, and that can make or break your game. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet at me at ibooby. Cheers!